Let's talk.
John Brown.
The smallest room in the house. Now, it's not what you think. It's 50 political oddities to read in more than one sitting. It's based on Philip Cowley's entertaining columns in The House magazine. It's a collection of political oddities and fascinating research, leading everything from the politics of fights, cockroaches, riots, potholes, beards, and much more. And we can find out why you need to pay extra care when you visit Scunthorpe. I'm delighted to say that joining me live on the line from the flesh pots of, presumably, the house itself, is the author of The Smallest Room in the House. It is none other than Philip Cowley. Philip, good morrow to you, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Whereabouts do we find you in this at the moment?
You find me in a very wet Sussex, where the weather has summer has definitely finished.
Yeah, I was just saying to listeners before, the listeners, just so you know, I thought that Philip had a rather sort of an aquarium that was going bananas behind him, but it is in fact, it looks like that's going to be a deciduous tree going down in the background in about 5 minutes.
It's a tree, and if it lasts this gale out, it's done well. Yeah.
So for those who don't know you, just explain a little bit why you were so eminently qualified to write The Smallest Room in the House.
So I'm Professor of Politics at Queen Mary in East London, and I have been researching elections and Parliament now for the best part of 30-something years. And the longer I've done it, the more I have come to realise that two things. First, I think elections are fundamentally interesting. They're not just important. They're interesting, and they're interesting because of what they tell you about people and the way people behave. There's a Mark Twain line about how if you really want to know what the human race is like, you should see how it behaves at election time.
Right.
And the second thing that has come to be really obvious to me is that lots of the really good research that is being written on elections and voting and Parliament and so on often doesn't get out in front of the general reader. It sits in sort of university libraries or university academic journals, maybe not unread, but underread. And the point of the book and the columns on which the book is based was an attempt to get some of this stuff in front of the general reader in a way which they could read and enjoy. And The Smallest Room in the House is both a pun on the fact that they were originally columns in the House magazine, but also that I've written them bluntly to read in a visit to the toilet.
Right.
So this is there's no pretense about it. This is a loo book. It's a politics loo book for people who like politics or might be interested in politics. That if you get through more than one or two chapters a visit, that you need to eat more prunes.
Yes,
but that's the point behind the book.
Yes, you can insert your own landslide joke here, listeners, and please don't call me in on with those after this show. So I mean, because people say, "Oh well, are we going through a malaise, Philip, at the moment? Are we at a period now where, quote unquote, Britain are broken? You can't move from people heading determinedly towards mini roundabouts with white and red paint. I mean, are we in a situation now where we need a book that will change the thoughts of the nation whilst, sitting in the smallest room of the house?
Well, it maybe in some ways, there's. But let me deal with two aspects of that. So the first, one of my favourite chapters in the book is about violence during elections.
Right.
Because we have this view, I think, sometimes that the past was a very peaceful time, and now everyone's really unhappy and grumpy. In the 1868 election in Britain, during that election campaign, there were 39 separate riots linked to the election, involving 17 deathths.
Good grief.
Now, That is the 1868 wasn't a one-off. The subsequent elections were pretty similar. It only really starts to dip in British elections at the beginning of the 20th century. So when we say everyone's unhappy now, politics is broken, I understand all of those tensions. I really do. And you see them in lots of ways in Britain at the moment, as you do in other countries in Western Europe and elsewhere. But let's put it in some perspective. We have, compared to a system of 140 years ago, we have a very settled and calm political system. And I don't want to go back to a situation where we have, almost 40 riots during an election.
I mean, was this presumably a thing with rotten boroughs? Was this that you had to vote as your landowner sort of said you should, or was this the emancipation of man? I mean, what exactly is going on here?
No. In fact, it comes after the rotten boroughs. So it comes after 1832, and in fact, that's the interesting thing about it is that the historians used to think that there was a lot of violence in British elections until you got the extension of the franchise.
Yeah.
And in fact, what researchers have been able to do now is go back and analyze things systematically and show that actually violence was much more common. And it wasn't even just bottom-up violence. It wasn't just that people were getting sort of rowdy or boisterous. It was often organized violence. It was political campaigns organizing people to go into rival campaigns, to go to meetings and break them up and so on. They were often paid. They would pay thugs to go into rival meetings and break them up. That was a systematic part of late Victorian elections. And again, what is interesting about this, and this comes through a lot in the book, is that some of the reasons we know some of these things now and we didn't previously is it's now possible to find them out. So this research was done because of the digitization of newspaper archives.
Right.
Some of the 20 years ago would not have been possible. Right? They get computers, they scan these archives, they look for words like riots, and they find they're all over the place.
Right.
And therefore historians, 40 years ago, some dusty historian working in a library would simply not have been able to do that sort of research, and therefore was not able to quantify the scale of violence in Victorian elections. Now, that's just one example. There's loads more in the book.
I got this image of Palmerston putting a banning order for 150 years on it, but that's obviously not what happened.
Exactly. But the other one you say about trust, in general, frustration and trust in politics. I mean, again, I deal with this in the book. I think we have to be really careful here. We often hear politicians talk about how they would like to regain the trust of the public. The politicians in Britain and bluntly in most other countries have never had the trust of the public. You can't regain something that you never had in the first place. Trust in politicians and politics has always been low. The British public have always been cynical about the political class. There is absolutely nothing new about that at all. Now it's manifesting itself in particular ways at the moment, but that basic level of distrust has always been there.
Yeah, I'm just looking because it's obviously 50 years since basically Harold Wilson, the Labour Party, in what was almost a sort of very British coup, etc. So you can't come back and say, well, it was better then. It was all flares and listening to Shuwadi Wadi, and everybody had a lovely time 50 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who remembers Shuwadi Wadi will tell you that life was not always good in the past. Yeah.
Now, what does your lawn tell us about? This is fascinating. Is it the cut of your lawn? Is it whether you have diagonal stripes or you go immediately? So
the lawn one was actually one of the very first conversations I ever had with an MP.
Right.
I mean, we must now be talking sort of 35, 40 years ago. Was an MP told me that when he was out canvassing, he could predict how someone would be voting based on their lawn.
Right.
Basically, if they had a really smart, well-manicured lawn, they would be Tory voters. If they had if it was overgrown, there were lots of weeds, then they were more likely to be Labour or Liberal voters. Now, I remember at the time thinking, "Oh, come on, you're having a laugh. That's borderline delusional. It's not true." But since then, I have had multiple similar conversations with people. And in fact, there is political research that shows, for example, that people on the right, conservatives with a small c, tend on average to have tidier desks and tidier bedrooms than people on the left. People on the left tend to be more, free thinking and maybe a bit sloppier in terms of things like personal appearance. So actually things like your lawn, someone else, I remember someone saying to me once, a political canvasser, that you could tell if windowsills were well looked after.
Yes.
If the part on windowsills that was a Tory voter.
I'm just remembering because I come from, my grandparents lived in Stafford, which is a lovely market town, a long private cul-de-sac, all detached house with that, the little front lawn. And I'm just thinking they were all that light and dark green and they were, horizontal stripes. And that was even the garden gnome stood to attention in the right way.
Well, exactly. So the other one that I really like is a piece of work which found that the prevalence of chip shops in a constituency related very highly to the Brexit vote. Places with more chip shops tended to vote Leave than places that did not have more chip shops. And if you think about it, it's maybe not that surprising. So the converse of this, they looked at places with Japanese restaurants. Right. And they found that the more Japanese restaurants that were in a constituency area were the other way. Bluntly, more cosmopolitan places. Now, it's obviously not that the chip shop or the Japanese restaurant is the thing driving the vote, but it's another manifestation of the cultural. Are we coming on in the same way that the lawn is not making you a Tory? Yeah, it's the fact you are a Tory that makes your lawn neat. Are you coming onto the Cummings and get out of your metropolitan things and go to the real country quote here, are we? So you're going to get away from your Wagamamas and your sushi rolls and go and get a a battered sausage to find out what the voters are really thinking? I mean, many years ago, way before Dominic. Probably not way before Dominic Cummings, but I remember a Labour MP saying to me a long time ago that the UKIP vote went up in places where there was good fish and chips, and I think that that is, and it was then really interesting, therefore, to see a bit of research that actually went out and proved it. So, here's another thing. Football grounds. Now, football used to be tribal. When I grew up in the 70s and 80s, football was tribal. We didn't go to football matches. We hid. However, now football's become all encompassing. It's a thing you take the family to, and you can't beat, the women's and all that sort of thing. So what's the football got to do with politics? Is it you're going to get more Brexit voters if you're in the shed end at Chelsea? What's happening? So the football grounds is a very similar example to the chip shop. Right. Which is if you map where football grounds are based, you found, and this is an important distinction because the 2024 election rather threw a spanner in this work, but prior to 2024 and the Labour landslide, as you went down the leagues, you got more and more conservative grounds in conservative constituencies, and you got more and more grounds in constituencies that voted Leave rather than Remain. And again, it's not, just to be clear, that the football club is the thing driving your vote. It's the causal relationship is the other way around. Big Premier League grounds tended to be in big cities. Yep. Big cities, even in 2019, tended to vote Labour and Remain. And as you went down the leagues from the Championship into League One or League Two, and even more so once you went into non-league, you found more Conservative seats or you found more Leave seats. 2024 completely scuppered that because straight after the 2024 election, there was only one football ground in England and Wales out of the 92 that was in a Conservative seat. The Conservatives got so wiped out that we were down just to Bromley. That's now increased to 2 as a result of the promotion, but still the analysis now is slightly weaker. But I think if the tectonic plates change after the next election, you will see some of those patterns re-emerge. And here's the thing, though, because surely nothing underlines the free movement of goods and people than your average Premiership team, because they've all come from most have come. Well, that's a very different point. I mean, exactly. If you want to see the free movement of goods and services, look at football clubs. Indeed. But that's a different point. Yes. Why is certain risks? Because I host a phone-in show for my sins, and we get people going up. You see, the problem is that there are no-go zones. People can't go because there's no-go zones there, and presumably Scunthorpe. I've always been told about Tower Hamlets as if it's some sort of dystopian nightmare where I'm going to get an Assegai through my lower lip. But apparently Scunthorpe is the most dangerous place. Is it? No. We need to be careful here for 2 reasons. Okay. First is because the first reason is because I don't want to insult the people of Scunthorpe or other constituencies. The second is because I don't want you as a broadcaster to get into any difficulty. Oh, I do that all the time. Don't worry about that. With your regulatory authorities. Let me just make the broad point here, and your listeners and you can work it out for yourself. That joke, which I'm very proud to have got in print, because I got it in print in the pages of the House magazine, and then recently the Times Diary picked it up, somewhat to my surprise, and so I can say that I've now got this gag into the Times Diary, the paper of record in the UK. It's a chapter talking about politician visits and the care that has to be organised around where politicians go on visits.
Right.
So there are these people who run elections, help run elections, called advance teams. So when a politician does some photo op somewhere, in advance of that photo op, some poor staffers have travelled to the constituency. They found somewhere where they can do this photo op. They've gone into some shops and said, would you mind if we did a factory or a play school or whatever it is in order to do the photo op? But they obviously have to be very careful about what the politician can be photographed near. So there's a very famous story about Ming Campbell, the Lib Dem spinners tearing their hair out when Ming Campbell is shown looking down a toilet as if to say, that's the end of my career. And you have to be very careful near exit signs, for example. You can't have a politician photographed underneath an exit sign. And I merely make the point, and again, I want to be very careful here because of regulatory standards, that if you go and visit Scunthorpe, you have to be very careful where you go.
Yes. Now. Okay. Thank you. I'll let the listeners work that one out.
Let the listeners can work it out for themselves.
Yes, indeed. What are you hoping then that people are going to, as the Americans say, what would you hope that people learn from your book?
Oh golly! I mean,
is there a life lesson?
Well, no. I'll tell you. In a sense, there isn't. And I'm quite open about this in the book.
Yeah.
Because you get these books. You must have seen them at W.H. Smith's or in airports or the equivalent. And it's called 6 Lessons That Will Change Your Life. Yeah. This isn't. This is 50 rather random observations that I wrote basically because my deadline was approaching, and what on earth am I going to write about this week?
Yeah.
And it ranges very, very widely. I suppose if there is something that links them, it is that actually politicians and politics are more interesting than you think, and the way people behave are more interesting than you think.
The book is called The Smallest Room in the House. It's by Philip Cowley, who's been to today. Listeners, you can order it via our own virtual bookstore. Go forth, click on the link, and it'll be winging its way to you. If people want to follow you online, say nice things, and see how that tree is doing in the background, where should they find you?
I'm on both Twitter and Blue Sky, Philip J. Cowley.
Philip, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. Have a great day. Philip Cowley, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.